We need to talk, Emily. This concerns your attendance at our special day. My mother's voice cut through the phone with that familiar tone, the one that always made my stomach drop. I was standing in the lobby of the Grandview Manor in Charleston, South Carolina, watching the final preparations for my parents' vow renewal ceremony unfold before my eyes. The same ceremony I had spent $47,000 planning and funding. My name is Emily Warren. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a marketing director for Crimson Harbor Group here in Charleston. For the past 6 months, I had poured my heart, soul, and savings into making this day perfect for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. Every detail from the imported white roses to the string quartet had been my responsibility. Every vendor payment, every deposit, every upgrade, all from my account. What do you mean you need to talk? I asked, though something cold was already settling in my chest. Around me, guests were beginning to arrive. I recognized faces from my parents' social circle, people I had known since childhood, but who always seemed to look through me rather than at me. Just meet us in the bridal suite, my father said, taking the phone from my mother. His voice was different too, distant, almost businesslike. We'll explain everything. I walked through the ornate hallways of the venue I had personally selected, past the floral arrangements I had spent weeks choosing, toward a conversation that felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff. The Grandview Manor was everything my parents had dreamed of. Elegant, prestigious, expensive. The kind of place that would impress their friends and give them stories to tell for years. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was about to be excluded from the very event I had created. When I reached the bridal suite, I found my parents standing together like a united front. My mother, Patricia, was radiant in her cream silk dress, the one I had helped her pick out during 3 separate shopping trips. My father, Robert, looked distinguished in his tailored suit. They looked like the perfect couple celebrating their enduring love. They didn't look like people about to devastate their daughter. "Emily, sweetheart," my mother began, and I immediately knew I was in trouble. She only called me sweetheart when she was about to deliver bad news. "We've been thinking about today, and we've decided it would be better if you didn't attend the ceremony." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "It's nothing personal," my father added quickly. "It's just that this day is about us, about our marriage, and having you here might create some complications." I stared at them, trying to process what I was hearing. This was my parents' vow renewal, yes, but it was also my financial investment, my months of planning, my dream of finally being part of something meaningful in our family. Growing up, I had always felt like an outsider in my own home. My parents had their tight circle of 2, and I was the third wheel who happened to share their DNA. "Complications?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of complications?" My mother exchanged a look with my father, one of those wordless communications that married couples develop over decades. It was the same look I had seen countless times throughout my childhood, the look that said they were making decisions about me without including me in the conversation. "Well, you know how you can be," my mother said with a sigh. "Sometimes you draw attention to yourself. Today should be about celebrating our love story, not dealing with family drama." The accusation stung because it was so unfair. I wasn't dramatic. If anything, I had spent my entire life trying to be the perfect daughter, the one who didn't cause problems, who supported their dreams and ambitions even when they didn't support mine. When my father's business went through a rough patch 5 years ago, I was the one who helped them keep their house. When my mother wanted to redecorate their living room, I was the one who paid for the furniture. When they decided they wanted this elaborate vow renewal, I was the one who made it happen. "I've been planning this event for 6 months," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I've paid for everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the music, Everything. And now you're telling me I can't even attend? And we appreciate that. We really do, my father said, though his tone suggested he was already moving past this conversation in his mind. But this is about what's best for everyone. You'll understand someday when you're married. The casual dismissal was like salt in an open wound. At 33, I had been in several serious relationships, but none had worked out. My parents had never been shy about pointing out this failure, as if my single status was somehow a reflection of my inadequacy as a person. They had never considered that maybe their constant criticism and emotional distance had something to do with my struggles in maintaining relationships. Besides, my mother added, and there was something almost cruel in her smile, you've always been something of an outsider anyway. This is more of a family event. Those words hung in the air between us like a slap. I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, but something deeper. The last thread of hope I had been holding on to that someday, somehow, I would find my place in this family. I see, I said quietly. So I'm good enough to pay for your dream wedding, but not good enough to witness it. Don't be dramatic, Emily, my father said. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Standing there in that bridal suite, surrounded by the luxury I had paid for, I realized something profound about my relationship with my parents. This wasn't about them wanting privacy or avoiding complications. This was about them not wanting me there because they genuinely didn't consider me part of their inner circle. After 33 years of life and 6 months of pouring my resources into their dream day, I was still just an outsider who happened to be useful when they needed something. The revelation should have been devastating, but instead, I felt something unexpected. Clarity. You know what? I said, setting down my purse and looking directly at both of them. You're absolutely right. This is your day, and you should have exactly what you want. My parents looked relieved, clearly expecting me to accept their decision, and fade quietly into the background as I always had. My mother even smiled and reached out to pat my arm, in what she probably thought was a comforting gesture. I'm so glad you understand, sweetheart. Maybe we can all have dinner next week to celebrate. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, stepping back from her touch. I understand that you want a family celebration without the family member who made it possible. I understand that my money is welcome here, but I'm not. I understand that I've been fooling myself for years thinking that someday you might actually see me as more than just a convenient ATM. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My father's expression hardened, and my mother's smile faltered. Emily, there's no need to be bitter, my father said. We're not asking you to disappear forever. We just want this one day to be perfect. Perfect, I repeated, tasting the word. And having your daughter present would make it imperfect. You're being childish, my mother snapped. And there it was, the real Patricia, the one who emerged whenever someone challenged her vision of how things should be. This is exactly the kind of behavior we wanted to avoid. You're making everything about you. I looked around the suite one more time, taking in the expensive champagne chilling in the silver bucket, the elaborate flower arrangements, the designer dress hanging in the corner. Every single item in this room existed because I had made it possible. Every guest downstairs was here because I had sent the invitations. Every moment of joy my parents would experience today was built on my investment in their happiness, and they didn't want me there. You're right, I said finally. I am making this about me. Because for the first time in my life, I'm going to put myself first. I walked toward the door, my hand on the handle when my mother called out one last devastating blow. Emily, wait. Don't leave angry. You know we love you, but you have to understand. You've always been a Mooch. We've given you so much over the years, and now you're acting like we owe you something. The word Mooch hit me like a physical assault. After everything I had done, everything I had given, she was calling me a Mooch. I turned the handle and walked out without another word. I walked through the hallways of Grandview Manor with my head held high, even as my heart was shattering into pieces. Guests were streaming in now, dressed in their finest clothes, chattering excitedly about the romantic celebration they were about to witness. I recognized so many faces, family friends, my parents' neighbors, colleagues from my father's law firm, women from my mother's book club, people who had known me since I was a child, who had watched me grow up trying desperately to earn my parents' approval. Not one of them looked at me as I passed. To them, I was just another wedding coordinator, invisible staff making sure their evening went smoothly. The irony was bitter and perfect. I made it to the parking lot before the tears started. Sitting in my car, I allowed myself exactly 2 minutes to cry. 2 minutes to mourn the relationship I had been chasing my entire life, the acceptance I would never receive, the family connection that had always been just out of reach. Then I wiped my eyes, started the engine, and drove to the coffee shop 3 blocks away. I needed to think clearly, and I couldn't do that surrounded by the evidence of my own foolish hope. At the coffee shop, I ordered a large coffee and sat in the corner booth where I could see the street. My phone was already buzzing with texts from the wedding coordinator, asking about last-minute details. The florist wanted confirmation about the centerpiece placement. The caterer needed to know the final head count. The string quartet was asking about parking. All of these people were depending on me to make this event happen. All of these vendors had been paid by me, contracted by me, directed by me. And the people being celebrated wanted me gone. I stared at my phone for a long moment, scrolling through the dozens of contacts I had saved over the past 6 months. Every wedding vendor in Charleston seemed to be in my phone now. The venue coordinator, the catering manager, the florist, the musicians, the photographer, the decorator who had spent 2 days setting up the perfect ambiance. They were all waiting for my parents' perfect day to begin. But what if it didn't? The thought came to me suddenly, and with it, a strange sense of calm. I had spent $47,000 creating this event. I had planned every detail, approved every decision, signed every contract. My name was on every vendor agreement as the responsible party. My credit card had paid every deposit and final payment. This wasn't just my parents' vow renewal. This was my event, and if they didn't want me there, then maybe there shouldn't be an event at all. I pulled up the contact for Margaret Willis, the venue coordinator. She answered on the second ring. "Emily, perfect timing. I was just about to call you. The guests are arriving and everything looks absolutely magical. Your parents are going to be so—" "Margaret," I interrupted gently. "I need to cancel the event." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I'm canceling the vow renewal ceremony, effective immediately." "Emily, I don't understand. The guests are already here. The ceremony is supposed to start in 30 minutes. Are you having some kind of emergency?" I thought about that question. Was this an emergency? Or was this the first clear-headed decision I had made in months? "You could say that," I replied. "I'm the one who booked the venue, and I'm the one paying for it. I'm canceling the reservation." "But, Emily, this is highly unusual. What about your parents? What about the guests?" "That's not my concern anymore," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Can you handle the cancellation, or do I need to speak with someone else?" Margaret spent the next 5 minutes trying to talk me out of my decision. She explained about the non-refundable deposits, the disappointed guests, the vendors who had already arrived. She offered to hold the venue for an extra hour in case I changed my mind. She even suggested that maybe there had been a misunderstanding that could be resolved with a phone call. But I wasn't changing my mind. For the first time in my adult life, I was making a decision based on what I wanted, rather than what would make other people happy. "I understand this is inconvenient," I told Margaret, "but the decision is final. Please secure the venue and inform the guests that the event has been canceled by the sponsor. After I hung up with Margaret, I called the catering company. The manager, James Peterson, was less diplomatic in his shock. Miss Warren, we have a full dinner for 60 people ready to serve. The servers are already at the venue. The champagne has been opened. You can't just cancel an event 30 minutes before it starts. Actually, I can, I said calmly. Check your contract. I'm listed as the responsible party and the decision maker. The event is canceled. But this is going to be a disaster. The food, the staff, the logistics. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but this is not my problem anymore. Next was the florist, Elena Rodriguez, who actually started crying when I told her. She had been working since 5 a.m. to create the elaborate arrangements my mother had requested. The thought of all those beautiful flowers going to waste clearly broke her heart. Emily, please reconsider. The arrangements are so beautiful. Your parents are going to love them. Can't you work out whatever problem this is? The flowers are lovely, Elena, and I'm sure you'll be able to use them for another event. But this celebration is not happening. The string quartet took the news professionally, though I could hear the frustration in the violinist's voice. They had turned down another gig to play my parents' Renewal. The photographer was already at the venue and had to be called back. The decorator who had spent 2 days creating the perfect ambiance would have to pack everything up. Each phone call made the reality of what I was doing more concrete. I wasn't just disappointing my parents. I was dismantling an entire event that dozens of people had worked to create. Part of me felt guilty about the vendors and their wasted time, but a larger part of me felt something I hadn't experienced in years: power. For once, I wasn't the one being inconvenienced. I wasn't the one being excluded or dismissed or taken for granted. I was the one making the decisions, and everyone else had to adapt to my choices. By the time I finished my phone calls, it was 4:15 p.m. The ceremony had been scheduled to start at 4:30 p.m. In 15 minutes, 60 guests would be gathering in the empty ballroom of Grandview Manor, waiting for a celebration that would never begin. My phone started ringing almost immediately. The first call was from Margaret at the venue, probably calling to confirm that I was serious. I declined the call. Then came a call from an unknown number, probably one of the vendors trying to reach me through a different line. I declined that one too. Then my phone lit up with my mother's name. I stared at the screen for a moment, watching her name flash over and over. They must have realized by now that something was wrong. The guests would be asking questions. The venue staff would be explaining that the event had been canceled. My parents would be standing in their beautiful clothes in an empty room, facing the consequences of their decision to exclude me. I declined the call and turned off my phone. I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, watching the street through the window and imagining what was happening 3 blocks away at Grandview Manor. By now, the guests would have been turned away at the door. The venue would be empty, except for vendors packing up their unused services. My parents would be standing in their formal attire, trying to explain to their friends and family why the celebration they had been planning for months had suddenly evaporated. The thought should have made me feel guilty. Instead, I felt something close to peace. Around 5:30 p.m., I turned my phone back on. The screen immediately exploded with notifications. 37 missed calls, 62 text messages, 5 voicemails. My parents had clearly been trying to reach me, along with what looked like several family members and friends. I scrolled through the texts without reading them, just watching the names scroll by. My father, my mother, my Aunt Jessica, my cousin Brandon, even my high school friend Danielle, who must have heard about the cancellation through the Charleston social network. One text caught my attention, though. It was from my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who lived in the apartment next to mine. "Emily, honey, there are people at your door. They've been knocking for 20 minutes. Just wanted you to know in case you're not home." My parents had come to find me. I considered my options. I could go home and face them, listen to their anger and disappointment, probably end up apologizing and offering to reschedule everything. I could go to a hotel for the night and deal with the aftermath tomorrow. I could drive to another city entirely, and let them wonder where I had gone. Or I could do something I had never done before in my life. Exactly what I wanted to do. I opened my laptop and pulled up the airline website. There was a flight to Paris leaving Charleston at 11:45 p.m. with one seat available in business class. I had always wanted to visit Paris, but every time I had saved enough money for the trip, something had come up. My parents needed help with their mortgage, or my mother wanted to redecorate the kitchen, or they decided they deserved a special anniversary celebration. Tonight, I was going to Paris. I booked the flight using the same credit card that had paid for my parents' canceled vow renewal. The irony was delicious. The money I had saved by canceling their event would fund my escape from the aftermath. I spent the next few hours shopping for clothes and toiletries, arranging for a pet sitter for my cat, and packing a small suitcase. Every task felt surreal, like I was watching someone else live my life. The Emily who had woken up this morning would never have canceled her parents' wedding or booked a spontaneous trip to Europe. But that Emily had died somewhere in the bridal suite at Grandview Manor, killed by the casual cruelty of people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. At 9 p.m., I drove to the airport, leaving my phone in the car. I didn't want to be tempted to read the messages or return the calls. I didn't want to hear my parents' explanations or threats or attempts at manipulation. I wanted to disappear completely from their drama and their disappointment. As my plane taxied down the runway, I looked out the window at the lights of Charleston growing smaller below me. Somewhere in that city, my parents were probably still trying to understand what had happened to their perfect day. Their friends were probably gossiping about the mysterious cancellation. The vendors were probably shaking their heads about the crazy client who had wasted thousands of dollars and dozens of people's time. And I was flying to Paris, finally putting myself first. 3 days later, I was sitting at a café in Montmartre, watching the sunrise paint the Sacré-Cœur Basilica in shades of gold and pink. My phone, which I had finally turned on to let my work know I was taking emergency vacation time, had over 200 unread messages. I deleted them all without reading them. Paris was everything I had dreamed it would be. I spent my days wandering through the Louvre, strolling along the Seine, eating croissants at sidewalk cafes. For the first time in years, no one was calling me asking for money or favors or emotional support. No one was criticizing my choices or making me feel like I wasn't good enough. I was anonymous and free. On my 4th morning, I was having coffee at my favorite cafe when an American woman at the next table answered her phone. She was speaking loudly enough that I couldn't help but overhear. Oh my God, Jessica, you should have seen it. The whole thing was mortifying. Patricia and Robert were standing there in their formal clothes, and the venue manager had to tell everyone that the event was canceled. Nobody knew what was happening. Patricia kept saying there must have been some mistake, but then someone mentioned that Emily had been the one paying for everything. I nearly choked on my coffee. The woman was talking about my parents' vow renewal disaster. She continued her conversation, describing how my parents had tried to salvage the situation by inviting everyone to a nearby restaurant, but most of the guests had already left. How my mother had spent the evening crying, and my father had been making angry phone calls trying to find me. The worst part, the woman continued, is that everyone knew Emily had been funding the whole thing. Patricia has been bragging for months about how generous her daughter was being, and then to have it all canceled at the last minute. Well, it doesn't look good, does it? I smiled into my coffee cup. The woman was right. It didn't look good at all. That evening, I climbed the steps to the top of Montmartre and found a quiet spot overlooking the city. Paris spread out below me like a glittering dream, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete contentment. My phone buzzed with a new message, and for some reason, I decided to read this one. It was from my Aunt Jessica, who had always been the family mediator. Emily, please call me. Your parents are devastated. They want to make things right. They're talking about rescheduling the vow renewal, and including you this time. Please don't let one misunderstanding destroy your family. One misunderstanding. as if 33 years of being treated like an outsider was just a simple miscommunication. I typed back a single response. I'm exactly where I need to be. Then I turned off my phone and slipped it into my purse. Standing there at the top of Montmartre, watching the lights of Paris twinkle below me, I realized something profound. For my entire life, I had been trying to earn a place in my parents' world, bending myself into shapes that might finally make them proud of me. I had paid for their dreams, supported their ambitions, and sacrificed my own happiness trying to become the daughter they wanted. But I had never asked myself a crucial question. Did I actually want a place in their world? The answer, standing there in the cool Paris evening, was surprisingly clear. No, I didn't. I didn't want to be part of a family that saw me as a convenient source of funding rather than a person worthy of love. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life chasing approval from people who would never see me as anything more than useful. I whispered into the night air, my voice carried away by the wind. If they didn't want me at the party, they'll never see me again. My parents spent the following months dealing with the social fallout from their canceled vow renewal. Their friends talked, as friends do, about the mysterious circumstances surrounding the event's sudden cancellation. When the truth emerged, that I had funded everything, and then pulled my support when excluded, the gossip only intensified. Patricia found herself having to explain to her book club why her daughter would do such a thing, while Robert faced awkward questions from his law firm colleagues about family dynamics. Their planned 25th anniversary celebration became a cautionary tale in their social circle about taking family for granted. They attempted to reschedule the event twice, but without my financial backing, they couldn't afford the scale of celebration they had originally envisioned. The smaller, more modest gatherings they eventually held felt hollow, compared to the grand romantic gesture they had lost, and they were constantly reminded of what might have been if they had simply included their daughter in their joy. I never did return to Charleston. I extended my stay in Paris, then spent months traveling through Europe, finally living the life I had always dreamed of but never prioritized. Eventually, I settled in a charming coastal town in southern France, where I started a small marketing consultancy and learned to speak French fluently. Looking back on that day at Grandview Manor, I realized that my parents had given me an unexpected gift. They had finally shown me exactly where I stood in their lives, which gave me the clarity to choose where I wanted to stand in my own. The revenge I had taken wasn't really about canceling their party. It was about finally putting myself first and discovering that I was worth so much more than their conditional love.